There is nothing wrong with you if you need to see the same word or use it like 50 times. That's a complicated question. I know a lot of tutors who take it too far. You cannot know until you try. It's not only what you're saying, it's also how you're saying it. So that part is also very important at that early stage already. Most people need a lot more revision and a lot more repetition than what textbooks provide and most tutors provide. So it's not that Duolingo kind of situation. It's vocabulary that you actually need. They still want some fun, you know? Some people might feel like they're lagging behind if they don't adopt AI soon enough. That's I think what I would start with.
Tutor Tech, a project about teaching languages, learning, technology, and how they co-evolve together. By where? App to collect and learn words you actually need.
Hi, hello everybody. This is Tutor Tech project and podcast about teaching languages, learning languages, and technology and how they all co-evolve together. My name is Dima Basenko. I am author of the project, your host today, and also co-creator of application Ver, a vocabulary application for intermediate and advanced learners. You can check it out at woor.app. And today with me is Ina Mezensava. Very happy to have you.
Happy to be here.
You have 10 years of experience as a teacher and tutor and a learning designer.
Yeah, 10 years of experience as a teacher, tutor, learning design came later, about 5 years ago.
Nice. And also the part which I'm curious about, you also speak 5 languages. And as a tutor, you also specialize in teaching English pronunciation and speaking for intermediate and advanced learners.
Well, I used to because I'm not teaching at the moment, and I'm trying to move on to learning design in other fields other than, English as a foreign language, EFL teaching. So, but in the past, when I used to teach, yes, I used to focus on B2, C1 learners of English, so intermediate, advanced learners of English, sometimes C2, adults only, mostly professionals working in international companies, many of them, or immigrants, and yes, pronunciation and speaking, being able to express themselves freely and also express the emotions they want to express, for instance, or sound the way they want it to sound. That was obviously a very important thing. So yeah, that was something I focused on.
Yeah, that is probably interesting part of learning languages, right? With one of the guests we talked about it, and there was an interesting point about a few stages of learning language, if you will. The first one, when things are more technical and people are understanding the ways of how things are structured, and then there is another part when people already know how things are organized, and in the second part they are already becoming capable of more expressing themselves and becoming their own selves, which they are in their own language. So it's kind of a interesting transformation.
Yeah, true. I guess people first start with what? Um, I mean, just thoughts and ideas they can express in a language, but as they move on, they can also move on to trying to think about how a little bit more, right? It's not only what you're saying, it's also how you're saying it. So yeah, that's, I think, a very logical thing to do, starting at approximately, B1, B2.
As a teacher, tutor, having that experience and background, but as a learner as well, how would you divide the journey of somebody who is learning a language into stages or levels?
Well, okay. I'm not a proponent of a grammar-based approach to learning languages. I'm more into the lexical approach side of things, but I do agree that there has to be a basic understanding of grammar, and that's one of the first things, right, that you have to achieve. Then, like, what do they say? 2,000 words, right? Most common words, most frequent words, and this like basic grammar that you can kind of make do in everyday conversation, and a little bit of cultural knowledge as well, because I would also put it at this first stage. I would say the cultural knowledge is a very important part of it, because it's not only about the fact that like Italians don't drink cappuccino after 1 p.m. or whatever. It's also about how, for instance, in English speaking countries, you're not supposed to answer "how are you" with, "I've got this back pain and it's been killing me for the last several days. Oh, and my kids, they've got problems at school." That you're not supposed to do that, which might be the case, on the other hand, where I come from. So that part is also very important at that early stage already. Right. So I would say that that's the first stage. And well, as a former pronunciation teacher, I would also add that pronunciation is, of course, part of learning the language from the very beginning. Don't leave it until later. But if you have a good tutor, then they should already be teaching you pronunciation at the point of teaching you new words or teaching you new grammar, If they're not, then think about it. So that would be the first stage. I would say that at the second stage, there would be this Stephen Krashen's idea of input, 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 input. When you already understand the basics, you can infer a lot of the things from context. And that's where input is key. You are working on at the second stage, you're working on expanding your passive vocabulary, I would say, and grammar, like passive grammar and vocabulary first. Like that would be the primary focus. And then moving all of it into your active vocabulary and grammar, like one piece at a time. Yeah. And at this like second stage, which is, I guess, the longest stage, and approximately would be like B1, B2, I guess, well, maybe upper A or A2. I'll add that at the second stage, you're mostly focusing on neutral language, I would say. I mean, the language that you can use in almost any situation with almost any person. So the language that would cover like 90% of where you need the language, right? And then at the third stage, like the advanced stage, you are looking into the small things, like how do I say that a little bit more politely? How do I say this more informally? Or how do I sound more assertive? So it's the intonation, if we're talking about pronunciation. It's the grammar and the vocabulary, because for instance in English, right, there are so many options. There are 10 words that are used to talk about just one thing, and you have to be able to choose.
At what moment, maybe, of a particular stage, learning and expanding vocabulary is becoming a priority for somebody who learns language?
Yeah, learning and expanding. So if we're talking about expanding vocabulary, starting at B1, I would say, but most of it is going to happen at B2. So that's intermediate, upper intermediate level.
Nice. And speaking of tutoring and teaching, how do you think practice of teaching a language changed within this 10 years in terms of technology?
So most of the change, I would say, has happened over the last 5 years. I would say that's what I felt. Speaking from my own experience and the experience of my colleagues. So we have started to use different presentation tools a lot more. As an example, the Miro board. It somehow falls pretty neatly into what we need to do in terms of, like when we create our own materials, especially, and we need to present the knowledge and make it look nice. Design has become a lot more important in teaching. Well, at least again where I come from, and that's something that I guess I have to say that so I come from Belarus, which belongs to this Eastern European region, not just in terms of the territory or culture, but also ELT culture, apparently. And for instance, my teachers of German are still using the same tools I think they have been using for many years, and it all looks pretty outdated, if I'm being honest. While teachers from that part of the world, which, as far as I understand, as far as I know, are a lot more tech optimistic. In the last several years, I know that a lot of teachers, myself included, have been using AI like ChatGPT to generate exercises. For example, when you feel like there hasn't been enough practice. Well, I still use textbooks. You can even see them over here. So I'm not the kind of tutor who works with their own materials only. No, I think textbooks are created by whole teams of people, of ELT experts with years of experience, so we shouldn't overlook that. But for instance, if there hasn't been enough practice dedicated to a specific topic in a textbook, which is very often the case, or when a student is struggling with a particular topic, then I can, for instance, ask ChatGPT to generate some additional exercises to practice those words. For example, I don't really need any help in terms of course creation or materials creation. Like, my brain is usually creative enough, but again, I know that a lot of teachers use AI for that, and yeah, AI does a pretty good job. Then some teachers have been using AI to make checking and correcting homework faster. I am not a huge proponent of that. I've tried, feeding some of my students' texts to AI and asking it to correct them and explain its corrections. I haven't been particularly happy with the results yet, but well, of course, they're still learning. Those models are still learning. So who knows, maybe in the future. So far, I'm not very happy with the result. I think I can do better at this point. What else? There are organization tools, for instance, like I've been using Notion a lot to just organize my materials, to keep everything neat and easy to find. And Canva, for instance. That's a design tool. When you want to design worksheets, you can generate those worksheets or images quickly and easily. That helps us as teachers. In terms of learning, there are lots of tools. Like, everyone's using Duolingo. Whenever I can, I'm actually trying to do some defluencing and talk people out of using it, because I don't think it's a very useful tool. But there are loads of tools, right, that learners can use to make learning faster, more efficient, and so on. I myself have been using flashcards a lot as a learner and a teacher, have been recommending them a lot to my students.
So it sounds like on the organizational side and administrative side, it was a lot of help, right? You told that this
Absolutely.
Usage of Notion and also ability to get additional input into preparing exercises or checking work, which you're not super happy about, right?
Oh, and YouTube. I forgot YouTube. When did it start? Like 2013, I think. I've I graduated from university in 2014. I actually started using YouTube a lot to find videos that I used for instruction. You know, we didn't have to, and now we don't have to rely on the materials, the video materials and the audio materials. They come together with textbooks. And I think like we underestimate, like we take it for granted now, and we underestimate how much of a change there has been. I'm sure that most tutors use YouTube, and learners, of course, right? YouTube, podcasts, different kinds of podcasts.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
It's way easier to access
that
content
has been a
than,
big
yeah.
change. Yeah.
You as a tutor or as a teacher, you told that you are not particularly enthusiastic about usage of Duolingo, but do you recommend to your students any software or any tools which help them to learn on like in class or off class as well?
Well, actually, not much because with my students, I normally organize everything for them, and they have it all. They don't actually have to do anything in addition. Um, the only thing that I sometimes recommend is flashcards because I know that it does help a lot of people, and I usually say, well, yeah, you never know. For some people, it doesn't work, but you just have to give it a try, and you cannot know until you try.
What makes it an interesting or helpful option, you think?
So I wouldn't base anyone's language learning on flashcards, right? So it's not the primary tool that you would use. The primary thing
Yeah,
you
definitely.
do is still, like maybe learning with a textbook if you do it on your own, maybe learning with a tutor, like that would be the primary thing. But thing is that something that I found most textbooks lack, and actually a lot of tutors overlook as well, is enough repetition. Um, Most people do not learn things on the fly. Most people need a lot more revision and a lot more repetition than what textbooks provide and most tutors provide. I think a lot of tutors really underestimate how much revision there should be in a language course. And well, I actually usually try and plan enough revision in all of my courses, and it's a very important part of all of my courses. But I know that even the amount of revision and repetition that I put into my courses may not be enough for some of my students because we're all different. And like that's okay. There is nothing wrong with you if you need to see the same word or use it like 50 times before you actually memorize it. It happens. And then flashcards are a really great way to make sure you get that repetition. It is also more like because, and I usually recommend making them for yourself. Sometimes I create them for my students. If not, then they create their own lists, right? So it's not that Duolingo kind of situation where you have to practice sentences like I gave her a mushroom, you know? It's vocabulary that you actually need, and something that you are actually studying in a course that you are doing with your tutor or by yourself, and then you need some additional help um, revising or repeating, reviewing this vocabulary or grammar. Uh, like you can actually, so this is a very big mistake. So I've also had a video on my YouTube channel about using flashcards. A big mistake that a lot of people make, a lot of learners make, is that they think that the only way to use flashcards is to put the word on one side and the translation on the other side, and that's how you go. But actually there are so many more options. Like you can do a gap fill exercise, for instance, which means on one side of the flashcard you have a sentence which provides a context, right? And then maybe you also, if this word is the missing word, so you have this gap instead of the missing word, and if the missing word is part of a set expression, for instance, or an idiom, then you can also highlight the rest of the idiom in color, or you can put it in bold. You might also want to add the translation of this whole phrase at the end, maybe, of the sentence, so you have a lot of different cues and you look at the word from different points of view, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually heard it a lot that it is very, very important for learning a language to be exposed to this language a lot, especially when you move past the beginner levels. When people have tutor, for example, or classes, and they have those classes for 2-3 times a week, if people are really serious about learning language, it might not be enough. So they need some additional support which would provide needed level of exposure to the language so that they can actually progress.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And learning can happen implicitly and explicitly. So explicit learning, that's when you actually sit down and do something in order to learn the vocabulary that you need to learn or the grammar that you need to learn, right? And that's when you do exercises from a textbook or use flashcards, right? You do it on purpose. You have this particular goal in mind, like I need to learn these words, and like that's what I'm doing now. And there is also implicit kind of learning when you're not learning anything in particular. You're just, for instance, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, and you just hope to pick it up somehow. And you're just trying to understand maybe not everything, but most of it, maybe from context, and you're trying not to stress too much about whether you understand everything, and you're just getting that input and allowing your passive vocabulary to grow.
also, I like your phrase, vocabulary which you actually need. I'm gonna try maybe steal that because I really like it.
Sure, I don't mind.
You also told that some of the teachers' practice might be a bit outdated in terms of technology because they can be using the same things which were there 5 or 10 years ago. If you would be now making an advice for somebody who is teaching a language, what could you advise them in terms of technology?
Okay. Oh, that's a complicated question. If they're not using anything, okay, that's it's
Yeah, I'm
not
exaggerating a little
easy.
bit. I'm exaggerating a little bit. Yeah. So in this sense, like get familiar with Zoom might be a bit too much, but 1 or 2 things which come to your mind first in terms of being the most helpful and effective.
Right. Um, I would say that a lot of people already expect gamification, that kind of thing. And it can actually go too far. And I know a lot of tutors who take it too far, who get obsessed with how their materials look, to the point that they are it becomes even hard to read what they've written on that weird board of theirs, because there's like too many objects and too many patterns and it's too colorful. And so you don't have to take it too far, but I would say that I would start with smaller things, like instead of doing the exercise in that you have in a textbook. I would say converting the exercise, just the regular exercise from the textbook, into an online exercise. So instead of just, opening the textbook or putting a screenshot, as a lot of tutors do, putting a screenshot like on the screen and just, filling in the gaps, what you can do is use tools like learning apps or WordWall. Both of them, well, Learning Apps is free. WordWall, I think, is if you want to get unlimited access, it's like $2.50, I think, a month, which is again not much, and you've got many templates that you can use to basically convert this normal regular exercise from the textbook into an online exercise with you can maybe put a background picture there, and then at the end of it the student sees this message saying well done, so that kind of thing. So a little bit of a gamification of the whole process really helps, including adult learners, because adults are children at the core of their dry souls. They still want some fun, um so yeah, or there are other tools like quizzes, for instance, where you can do quizzes, surprise surprise. And it's the same thing. So Kahoot is used a lot at schools, I think, with kids mostly. Tools like that. It just makes teaching, makes learning more engaging, right? That's I think what I would start with. And I guess read up on first probably read up on generally the instructional design and how to make learning more engaging, and then find the tools for that. But yeah, I would start with those that I've named.
I wanted to finish asking a couple of questions about AI. Obviously, that's something unavoidable. We kind of have to
Sure.
talk about it. And at what extent do you think AI is going to be able to replace tutors and teachers? You are also in an interesting position, focusing on specializing on pronunciation, right? And it
Yeah.
feels like now it is I don't know, for some reason which I don't understand 100%. It is a boom of applications for pronunciation now.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
right.
what do you think about it?
Well, hard to say, of course. Who am I to predict what it's going to be like in like 10 years, 20 years time?
But it's
From what I
always
can,
interesting to speculate, right?
yeah, well, from what I can gather, from what I can see at the moment, I don't think so. I do believe, like many other people do, that yes, AI is going to be able to enhance teaching. It's going to help tutors. Yes, those who are not going to be able to use it, who are going to like fall behind a little bit, I think they will experience a drop in interest, or like they some people might feel like they're lagging behind if they don't adopt AI soon enough. I do think that we are going to use it more extensively in the future. However, as I've said, like a lot of people are already using AI to come up with ideas, to generate additional exercises, and all of that is going to stay. I do think that AI is going to get better at, or might going to get better at, checking and correcting. Well, there are lots of tools already, right? And again, it is still not perfect. Whenever my students use AI to check their own writing, I always tell them that, like, don't trust it 100% because unfortunately it still slips up. And if we're talking about ChatGPT, for instance, it really likes to pretend like it knows everything when in fact it has made a mistake, for instance. And then there was this one time, for instance, where I saw a mistake in the exercise that it generated for me, actually. And I asked it, oh, like, look, there's a mistake there. And it was like, oh yeah, you're right. There's a mistake, but I'm kind of programmed to be similar to behave in a similar way to a human being. That's why I may sometimes make mistakes. I was like, well, great, but that's not what I want you. That's not what I need you to do. Anyway, so far it's not perfect in terms of checking and correcting writing or speaking, but I guess we're gonna get there. In like 5-10 years time, which is going to save teachers a lot of time, hopefully. But human connection, this old-fashioned kind of stuff, wanting to actually talk to a real human being. I don't know if you've watched any podcasts, AI-generated podcasts, but well, okay, maybe they are going to get so good that we are not going to be able to distinguish between real people and um AI-generated videos. But I don't really believe that. I don't think so. And even if they do, you are going to know it's AI, right? It's not a real human being. And I think as humans, we're always going to be longing for real connection and for real people to talk to. So yeah, I guess teachers, tutors are going to gradually move away from from the role of people who correct their students' texts or so provide feedback to someone who manages different or uses different tools, also AI powered tools, to like do the same but faster, and probably also still check whether what's been generated is good enough, and just provide that human kind of connection, warmth, motivation, and support. Because I'm not sure about you, but when a real person tells me that I'm doing great, it hits a lot deeper than, for example, when ChatGPT, at the end of, I still believe that this human connection is going to be at the core of teaching and is going to stay at the core of teaching.
That's nice. Let's be hopeful then. And the interesting thought about sort of positive affirmation that people might need or feel different about. I don't think that I heard about it before.
Yeah, me neither. I've just come up with it.
Nice. Okay, thanks a lot. This is all the questions which I had for you. And now also, as the last question, I normally ask if you have anything to share with people who might watch or listen to this. Basically anything. If somebody wants to connect with you or find you or know something about your projects which you might be working on.
Well, it's gonna sound a little bit weird. Yeah, I've had a long I'm not sure if I can call it a career, but yeah, it's not a career, but a long a lot of experience, right, as a content creator, and I've grown my social media channels to be, well, relatively big, and I think I've even been pretty successful in that role. But now,
I think they are.
I'm, you know, like transferring to this new, and I'm starting a new chapter in my life, trying to become a learning designer who, well, firstly isn't self-employed, but works for someone in order to, well, also to get more, to get access to the tools, including, AI tools that I haven't been able to access as a self-employed person, because there are lots of them that are really expensive, and like a small entrepreneur cannot really afford to have access to those tools. That's like one of the reasons why I'm doing that. Another reason is that, yeah, I want, I feel like I'm ready for something bigger than just ESL. So if I would just say that if anyone would like to connect, I would love to do that, to connect with me as a um, well, a learning designer with actually 5 years of experience working for myself, but zero experience of working for someone else. So that's why in Germany, at least where I live, some people look at me as a really experienced person, and others look at me as a person with zero experience, just for the reason that I haven't worked for any companies before. So what I'm saying is that yeah, I'd love to connect with anyone for on LinkedIn, for instance. I'm not posting anything on my YouTube channel or Instagram account anymore, but if anyone would be interested in my experience as a content creator and a self-employed teacherpreneur, as we say, then yeah, just message me, and if you like have any questions, if you'd like to get some advice, for instance, or just to connect, then yeah, you can just find me on LinkedIn, I guess. I'm not sure if you can add a link like somewhere in the description to the podcast.
I will. And if you wish to connect, then find Ina Mezensava on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
Thanks a
that's right.
lot. It was
Thank you.
pleasure talking to you. Good day.
Pleasure talking to you too. Bye.
Tutor Tech, a project about teaching languages, learning, technology, and how they co-evolve together. By Where, app to collect and learn words you actually need.